Australian fans, I've spoken on occasion with just, just mentions of people called sovereign citizens, free men on land. And I've said quite specifically that I don't ascribe to that ideology, and that ideology is completely false. Like, I mean, just not like it's false as in you can debunk it, as in literally it's false. Legally, it's completely wrong. Now, just a little bit ago, and this happened during the Defend DPRK week, so I couldn't jump on that right away. A guy in Alberta, what he did was, he filed a lawsuit against his landlord, claiming that she didn't pay him for doing renovations to an apartment, and she filed a lien, and he's looking to take the building away from her as relief for a supposed damage. Now, he has claimed that the place he's living in, this duplex, is an embassy, and therefore the Canadian government can't touch it. They can't come in and deal with them, blah, blah, blah. He's declared himself sovereign from the country, and that therefore this is his embassy of his country. Now, this is problematic on many, many levels, and it's actually a very huge, complicated legal argument. Obviously, morally, there's one thing, and then legally, there's another. So I spoke to a friend of mine that knows the law a little better than I do, and I just came up with some thoughts about what's happened. Now, what I really believe has actually happened is, now, what she's saying, her side of the story, is that she made an agreement with him that he could stay in the duplex rent-free for 3 months as long as he did the renovations. And that's, fairly a fair deal, what have you. Now, this was an informal agreement. Now he's saying she never paid him, and now she owes him money. Now, he gave her an invoice, like a bill, for what it is that he did, and now she owes him, and now he's suing, or he's going to be suing to get the money. In other words, he's filed a lien against the property in order to take it if she can't pay. Now, here's what I think really happened. They had, I had some notes here, they had an informal agreement. Basically what it was, she said, okay, you do these renovations, you can stay here rent-free for 3 months. So what he did was he accepted, did the renovations, then turned around, gave her an invoice for what he did, and now he's expecting her to pay it, because you can't prove that they had that informal agreement to begin with. So he goes to court, he says, here's the invoice, she agreed to pay, and I don't know what she's talking about with this rent-free thing for doing the renovations. He probably set it up to an amount that he knows she can't afford, so that way the court will have no choice but to hand over the building to him. The property would then become his in lieu of payment. Now, I believe that this is a trick. I don't know 100%, obviously, because I'm not one of the parties involved. From the way things seem from the outside, from the media reports, this was a deliberate, unconscionable, dishonorable act by the man. And he's essentially trying to abuse a legitimate legal process in order to benefit himself. And that's what I think is actually really happening. Now, he's done the work. He submitted her an invoice. She wouldn't pay him because that's not what she agreed to, so he's going to file a suit. Legally, outside of lying and saying he never accepted the 3-month agreement, he hasn't actually done anything wrong in that regard. That would be the legitimate legal process, to submit an invoice for the work that was done. And if they refuse to pay, you file suit, which means in the eyes of the law, outside of lying, which is an issue in and of itself because you can't prove it, he hasn't done anything wrong, and he's followed the entire legal process that you would go through to do that. So thus far, in my description, he's actually right. Now, what he's going to do is he's going to deny the formal agreement, instead claim that she said that she would accept an invoice at the end when it was done and then pay it. And then he'll say that was the real agreement, to submit an invoice at the end. So technically, outside of lying, he hasn't done actually anything wrong. Unethical? Absolutely. Dishonorable? Absolutely. Legally? Nope. The entire suit would be contingent on her proving her side of the story in the claims of verbal agreement. Because they're both essentially claiming a verbal agreement. They're just differing on what it is completely. In other words, that's exactly what it would come down to, who the judge is actually going to believe. Now, if she sues him first, or really at all, she can't win. The legal fees, if she wins, she keeps the property, but will probably end up losing it and having to sell it just to pay for all the legal stuff that went into it, right? She can win and then ask for costs from the guy, but she's probably not going to get it, because this guy more than likely doesn't have anything, which is why he's doing that, why he's doing all of this to begin with. So basically, no matter what, she's going to lose. Just affording a lawyer alone with this whole process, she is going to lose, and that's the end of it. There's probably not going to be any possible good ending for her at all. Now, going on to the issue of him claiming this to be an embassy. Now, it's stupid. He vaguely knows what he's doing. He's making a claim, but he really doesn't know how to carry it through. He's claiming himself to be a sovereign, meaning he's separate from the Canadian government. He's a free man. The law doesn't apply to him. I'll actually explain how that works later. And he's declared that duplex to be his embassy. And essentially, he's occupying it to be an embassy, and this is his territory now. Now, he has no basis for declaring himself a sovereign state. Okay, in order to do that, you have to meet a ton of criteria. There's a huge ton of process of, a ton of things you have to go through in order to achieve this. Most notably, you would need actual, property or land to declare a country. And two, you have to be recognized by another state. That's the great, thing about being a state. You have to be recognized by another state in order to be one. Well, he doesn't have any of that. He doesn't actually have any land or property, because he doesn't own the duplex. The duplex right now is under contention, meaning it's up for an interpretation by the law, by a judge, whatever, in a lawsuit as to who actually is going to be the owner. It's under contention. You can't take land that's under contention and declare it to be a country. You have to be the outright legal owner of it. So he doesn't have the support from another state to recognize him, and he doesn't have any land by which to claim as a separate country. So essentially, all he's really doing is declaring himself a country, or a state. A single person cannot be a state. A person cannot be a state. So essentially, his claim of this being an embassy is completely ridiculous. There's no legal basis for anything he's doing whatsoever. It's absolute total fraud. Now, he has no, like I said, he has no legal basis for claiming himself to be a state. So no matter what happens, the issue of this being an embassy or he's a sovereign is going to absolutely fall apart in court. It will not stand up. It will completely fall apart. Now, in civil court over the matter of the work versus payment, not being paid for the work, he would have to prove himself credible. In other words, it's his word against hers. They both are claiming a verbal agreement. It's his word against hers. And he would have to prove that he is more credible than her, which is not going to happen considering everything he's done since then, like declaring himself to be a state and declaring the duplex to be an embassy. In other words, he has no credibility when he walks into court. He's literally acting like a dumbass. He has absolutely no idea what he's doing, but he thinks he does. Now, the best thing for her to do would be to go to the tenancy tribunal and file an application to have him evicted. Of course, however, he can appeal, and these appeals can take, upwards of a year to go through the whole process. In some cases, it can take 2 years. going through all the various courts and appealing decisions. In other words, dragging the whole thing out. And like I said, these would take up to a year. Unless, of course, he's incarcerated. Because if he's incarcerated, he can't file a civil suit while you're in jail. You would have to have someone do it for you on your behalf. But he can't do that because he doesn't have any money. And he couldn't file it himself because he's in jail. Which is actually the main point. Because he is in jail. A couple of days ago, or depending on how long since this actually goes live, he was arrested and he was taken to jail. So there. I mean, I'm assuming the police found something, some kind of thing that they can charge him with. I mean, no doubt, the police are going to be on him for everything he's doing. So, this guy's pretty much just screwed himself. He's finished. Unfortunately, this lady's going to go down with him. So, he's being completely dishonorable. And his claims of being sovereign from the government for being his own state are just absolutely ridiculous. Now, onto the Freeman notion itself. It's completely wrong. The whole ideology is completely ridiculous, and it's no surprise that this Freeman-on-the-Land, it's called a Freeman in Canada, more commonly referred to as a sovereign citizen in the United States, is most often associated with libertarianism. These people are almost always libertarians. Basically, what they have is some kind of legal argument why the law does not apply to them. Now, I know, it's stupid. To make the argument simple, a sovereign citizen in the United States will basically claim, like, the Constitution doesn't apply to him. Like, whatever the rules of the Constitution are, they don't apply to him. Therefore, somehow the law doesn't apply to them. That's, like, somehow that means the law doesn't apply to them. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Now, in Canada, it works like the Constitution Act of 1982, where we got independence from England, because the Constitution doesn't apply to citizens. It supposedly only applies to the government. Therefore, the law doesn't apply to them. That is not what these documents do. The Canadian Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, that is not how they work. The Constitution dictates how the state interacts with you. And now they've come up with a whole bunch of like ridiculous arguments based on just really idiotic interpretations of the law. In other words, this is a legal movement from a standpoint of certain legal beliefs. And it's absolutely incorrect. It's absolutely wrong. Now, here's the point. There's some of the arguments, I just want to quickly go through some of the arguments that they do try to make. The law can never do anything against my religion because the law is based on God's law. And it does say that in the Constitution Act of 1982. However, that does not mean that the Bible trumps the law. That is not what that means. We have freedom of religion, yes, but with certain conditions. It's not an absolute freedom. It's been ruled in the Supreme Court, that it is not an absolute freedom. It is a freedom with some restrictions. Freedom of religion is not an absolute freedom, and the Bible cannot hold power over the government. Okay, it just doesn't work that way. I've been going on too long about this now. Just to cut it short, these people believe that they have found various legal loopholes, which supposedly means that the law does not apply to them. That is absolutely false. Frequently, it's a misunderstanding of, I believe it's Section 29 of the Constitution Act, and that's a complete misunderstanding of what it means. It does not mean that at all. The sovereign citizen movement is just completely wrong. It does not work. Now, I can't cite you anything for the US, but if you're Canadian and you want to understand better what I'm saying, look up the case precedent on Canley, which is the Canadian legal, just Google Canley, and look up the case Meads versus Meads. That basically debunks everything sovereign citizens say. Like it basically like goes like through all their arguments and just disproves everything. So I would suggest reading that if you're thinking about being a sovereign citizen or a free man in the land, because it doesn't work. These are gross misrepresentations of the law. The law does have jurisdiction over you. Again, there's a lot more I could say about things about courts of admiralty and the huge misunderstanding that surrounds those, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video was to give you an idea of what this guy in Alberta is trying to do, and why he's wrong, and why he will lose, and he deserves to lose. Because in the eyes of the law, he comes to court not just with unclean hands. Like he's basically like walking in with a dead body in his hands. Like, this guy will not win. There is no legal basis for what he's claiming, and he's going to get his ass kicked in court if it even gets that far. And then I just wanted to give you a general idea of these sovereign citizens. Now, a big misunderstanding of sovereign citizens, Freemen-on-the-Land, is that they're violent psychos that are coming to kill the police anytime. There was like in Canada, like one case of one guy doing it. So now whenever police label somebody a free man or a free man in the land, and frequently they mislabel people that, certain people, they will always treat any encounter with that person like their life depends on it. Like, this person's listed as a gang member for Freeman, which is ironic because a free man is the opposite of a gang, because it's not a collection of people, it's a rejection of collections of people, but whatever. They will treat that person like they're armed to the teeth and they're going to shoot you as soon as you knock on the door. That's absolutely false. I'm not defending free men on the land. I'm just saying this is a gross misrepresentation that police make. The Freeman sovereign citizen movement is a complete fraud. It does not work because it's based on a certain perception, a certain interpretation of the law that does not work. So I assume there's probably going to be one or two freemen that are going to get pissed off at me for this video. To those gentlemen, I say this. Screw common law. Learn equity. And also learn to act honorably. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, share on various social media. And if you want, there's some other good videos here you can check out.